Welcome back, guys. Today we are hanging out in the shop and we are talking shop. I'm taking a little bit of a break from working on the car. I need to catch my breath and I've got some other things I need to try to accomplish this week and get done. But I still wanted to put an episode out for you guys, and thankfully some of you guys have said you really enjoy the episodes that feature kind of the answers, the ideas that are behind the decisions I'm making, why I'm doing certain things. And so I've spent the last handful of weeks reading every single YouTube comment you guys have made and collecting the best questions, the most important questions, the deepest questions are the ones that I think are most worth answering, things that I feel like maybe I've done a poor job of explaining. We're gonna take the time, we're gonna run bottom to top on this episode. So if you don't like those episodes where I do a bunch of talking, this one is not for you. But if you wanna know more about lots of the decisions behind the 308 and how I'm solving certain problems, why I've done certain things, you're gonna dig this one. I've got so many things to share with you guys, and it's finally an opportunity to focus on those and really talk about stuff instead of just trying to showcase work. So let's dive into it. Question number one. You guys have been asking, what color is the car going to be, and am I gonna paint the fender flares? Are they gonna be body colored? Am I gonna leave them white? Am I gonna paint them black? What's really going on here? Well, if you've been subbed to Patreon, you've known what the color of the car is gonna be for, I don't know, a year and a half. But I have decided when I paint the car, I'm going to paint it yellow, and it's going to be Indy Yellow from the new NSX. It's really similar to Fly Yellow on the car right now, with a bit of pearl to give it a little bit of pop, and it's a Honda color to go with the engine. I think that'll tie it in really well. As far as the fenders go, they're getting painted body color. They are definitely not staying white. That's not an option in my opinion. I do not like the way the white looks. Some of you guys are really into it, but it's not for me. I do think black flares would look cool, but I want to see them body color. I think it'll give us a better, more fluid look overall and give us a more finished look. I do want to keep the hardware. I don't want to mold them into the car. I like that look personally, so that's what we're going with. Now, on the note of fender arches, a lot of you guys pointed out in the last episode where we set the car down on the ground for the first time that this arch shape is very inconsistent. It's wavy, wiggly, and it doesn't look good, and you're completely right. It was pretty hard to see without having a wheel and tire on the car, but the second I sat it down, I saw it too, and I was disappointed. We're gonna have to fix it. Don't know how it wound up this way because the rest of the kit does fit the car really well, but the arches on all four corners are all wiggly. None of them match each other. We're gonna have to do some body work. Pop-ups. I made an episode a long time ago about how I wanted to get rid of them, and then when we set the car down, I put the headlight buckets back in and said they are installed without motors and I'm locking them into place. A lot of you guys have had suggestions on what I should do for headlights, and the two most common ones are to get rid of this headlight cover and extend the vent down, which I photoshopped and it looked really bad. It really messed with the way the car looked and I was not into it. Or second is to do a small pop-up with a modern LED in it or something and just kind of have it lift a little bit. And I like where your head is at for that, but for me, the whole idea is to keep the pop-up from coming up. I think it really disrupts the way the car looks, and I know a lot of people really like pop-up headlights when they're up. For me, I like pop-up headlights because they disappear when they're down, and that's why they were incorporated in the design of this car. It was designed to have that wedge-shaped nose, and the pop-ups were a solution of how to give it lighting when it's needed. The 288 GTO circumvents that by having driving lights down in the front end, so we're gonna do something like that and keep these headlight covers down. I don't want a slimline pop-up, a subtle pop-up. I just want them to stay down so I never have to see them. I think the car looks great when they're down and starts to get pretty silly looking when they come up. My personal 2 cents. A lot of you guys do not like my rear wing. And honestly, I get it. I don't blame you, but I like it a lot. A lot of you guys don't like my end plates. You think they're too big, or some of you continue to say you think that they're on backwards, and I promise they're not. It's the way they're supposed to be. As far as the size, all I can say is this. If you like Wild Aero, you will like this once the car is finished. This is only a small portion of our aero package, and it does look out of place right now. It's the only thing on the car that looks this way. But once we get the rest of the aero package on here, because it's a time attack car, it's gonna all kind of come together and have a more cohesive aesthetic. If you're not into big, wild aerodynamic packages, you're not gonna like it. And unfortunately, it's just not gonna be for you. You probably think that it ruined the car, and that's fine, you're entitled to that. For me, I love the way this is turning out. I think this looks great. I love how this dies below the body line here, how it covers up part of the side of the car. It's very aggressive looking. I think it's gonna look really sweet. It really looks indicative of the time attack nature this car is being built for. So if you're up in the air about it, just have some faith, have some patience. We're gonna get there. We have a lot of other aero components to put on the car. If you're one of those guys commenting saying you think I should do like an F40 style rear wing, that's fine, but I'm not gonna do that. Ferrari already did that. It's a little bit boring for me. Now I mentioned that I've officially named the car the 244 GTK, and some of you guys have wondered, why that name, how did I get there, what does it mean? Well, the answer is relatively simple. I just followed some of Ferrari's nomenclature rules from the era. The 308 got its name by being a 3-liter, 3.0, and an 8-cylinder, 308. Because ours is a 2.4 liter, I'm going with 2.4, and since it's a 4-cylinder, 244. As far as the GTK goes, Ferrari had two different suffixes for this car, the GTB and the GTS. B for Berlinetta, that's a coupe, and the S is the removable spider top or targa top, if you will. Now, I went with K for obvious reasons. I wanted to change it up and add our own touch to it and identify the fact that this is not a Ferrari engine anymore. It's something completely unique. But what I like about it is Ferrari has used that K suffix before. On one of the craziest cars they've ever sold, the FXX-K. Now, in that instance, it stood for the KERS system, but I kind of wanted to tie into that. It's a Ferrari race car, that type of stuff, but still sort of a street car. That's exactly what we've got here. It felt like the perfect kind of tribute to that type of name, but with our own spin on it. So, 244 GTK, it's official. We'll get it on some shirts at some point. Just wait for it. Build cost is something I'm not ready to dive into yet, because it's kind of a weird subject, to be honest. It feels like it could come across the wrong way as I share, but I also don't want to hide things from you guys, and let's be honest, the cost of building a car is one of the most, if not the most, important aspect of getting a project finished, and I want that relatability to be there for you guys. I want you to know what it actually took to finish this thing. So I'm considering putting together a full cost breakdown episode once the build is done, once we have the series finished and we're just enjoying the car and refining it and enjoying it at the track. Maybe I'll do it. Let me know if it's something you guys want to see, and I'll put some thought into how I can approach that and do it the right constructive way. I want to share what goes into a car like this. It's just an odd subject, I think. You guys let me know. Lots of you guys told me to check out Ryan Tuerck's video of his Supra and how they accomplished his rear wing mounts and how he's able to still open his rear trunk or hatch with the wing attached to it. And admittedly, they have a very cool solution for it. It works really well. The only drawback is that's a very expensive solution. There is a lot of CNC'd billet aluminum in the back of that car. I don't have access to that kind of tooling to come up with that kind of solution. We could probably drum something up and assemble it ourselves using send, cut, send and two-dimensional files, but ultimately, it's still a bunch of weight back there. There's a lot of aluminum, all sorts of trussing and structure underneath that deck lid. And it's just not a solution that I think is so elegant that I'm eager to run out and do the same thing. I like what we've got. It's a little bit complicated. There's definitely room for revision. Ryan Tuerck's solution is awesome, no doubt about it. I think the perfect solution is somewhere in between. I just don't know what it is yet. I'll keep thinking about it. As far as the rear hatch goes, some of you guys have asked what I'm going to do about the fitment. We kind of left that up in the air in a previous episode. I've been doing some thinking about it, and ultimately I'm not really sure I'm going to be happy with the way that the rear engine cover we have right now is going to fit. Maybe a body guy could make it work, I don't know yet. But I have found a full vacuum-formed pre-preg dry carbon rear engine cover that isn't outrageously expensive. It's really not. So right now I'm leaning towards buying that, and presumably the fit's gonna be a lot better. It looks like a really nice part. It's also not like 30 years old. So I'm leaning towards that at the moment. Or if I come across another factory engine cover that's cheap, I might try that for the time being. Take the weight penalty, although we just talked about not doing that. Take the weight penalty for the sake of simplicity and fit and finish, and go from there. We'll see. I will admit the 308's mirrors suck. I do not like them. They are not what we're gonna leave on the car in the long run. I wanna do something that looks modern. Carbon, something real kind of spindly, maybe an F1 style mirror. I think it will match with the rest of the Aero. Might look a little bit out of place on the car if it were stock, but I think with everything that we're doing, I think they'll look the part. Evasive Motorsports has a mirror that I think would fit the bill really well. I was looking at this one. If you guys know of some other ones that look similar to this or that you think might look good, drop a link in the comments. Let me know. I'd be curious. This is not necessarily my forte. The only thing will be I need to 3D print or design a mount that can use this factory mount solution so that it still looks good and fits where the original mirror went. I don't want to go drilling a bunch of new holes and trying to fashion something new there. Some of you guys have made note about the fact that the steering rack in this car is original. It was never meant to turn wheels and tires of this size, never meant to operate against the forces that we'll be generating with this kind of downforce and that kind of stuff. At some point, we're gonna change the steering rack. I'm gonna drive it with the rack that we have in it for now, just to get an idea of what we're working with. And then when the time comes, I'm gonna call up Woodward Racing Racks, get a custom rack made to the right width, right ratio. We'll get it all dialed in so that we have a manual rack capable of turning these wheels. Power steering is an option, but I'm not really keen on applying it right now. I don't think that we need it, and ultimately it's just adding more complexity to something when I'd rather minimize it. I don't want to add that kind of weight, and I think a manual rack will be fine. But we'll worry about that later. The current rack will do the trick, at least for some basic testing. Let's talk about the turbo setup and the horsepower figures. Some of you guys have said, how do you know how much power it makes? I don't yet. We have it running, but we haven't put it on a dyno. But what I do know is what I paid for and what I asked for from the engine builder. I went to 4Piston Racing and said, I want a bulletproof, reliable 1,000 horsepower at the wheels of this car. What do we need to do to make that happen? And this is the engine we wound up with. Now, for a turbo on the car right now, we've got a Garrett G42. That is a huge turbo, and the main purpose of this turbo is to hit that 1,000 horsepower mark. I want that as a personal goal. I've said before though, this is not the turbo we're gonna run on track. When it comes to on-track usage, we're gonna drop turbo size and aim for a much more reasonable, give or take 600 horsepower, because that's gonna be a lot more manageable and usable power figure when we wanna drive this car at 10/10ths. But with that said, why build a car like this and not shoot for something incredible? I would love to see 1,000 horsepower out of this thing, so that's what the setup we have on the car is going to do now. As far as lag goes, I'm not too worried about it. It'll be fun. It'll have kind of old school big turbo characteristics. We're gonna change it up. We're gonna go over all of the new turbo setup once we dive in and build a second manifold, second exhaust, all that kind of stuff in some future episodes. Now, on the note of performance and horsepower, some of you guys have asked about my choice of oil and why I've chosen it. Now, I've said in previous episodes, we're using Pennzoil's Ultra Platinum Full Synthetic, and there are a lot of reasons why, not to mention the fact that Pennzoil's just been an awesome brand to work with. And for my Formula One friends out there, if you like Ferrari, you'll know that Ferrari runs Shell V-Power fuel and Pennzoil oil. If that's Ferrari's choice of oil, then I know my Ferrari is in good hands, and it's pretty cool to me to share a sponsor like that. Now, as far as the oil itself, the Ultra Platinum Full Synthetic has a lot of qualities that are going to pair really well with what we're trying to do. We've got a 2.4 liter engine, originally out of a family sedan, and we're asking it to make 1,000 horsepower. That's a big ask. That means it's going to generate a lot of heat and a lot of wear very quickly. So having the right oil in it is paramount to making sure the engine's gonna last. Now, Ultra Platinum Full Synthetic has a lot of qualities that work well with that. It is considered an extreme performance oil. It is meant for a job like this. It's also formulated to work well with turbochargers. We've got to keep this turbocharger working well. We've got to keep it lubricated, and thankfully this oil will do exactly that. And it'll play well with the wear and heat characteristics of a turbocharged engine. It's also a very clean oil with great wear prevention properties, and in all, it is the right tool for the job we're asking of this engine, and that's why we've chosen it. Simple as that. You need to come to the table with the correct tool for the job. Several of you guys have commented and said that you think the exhaust setup on this car is too short and we are going to burn the back of the car. And honestly, you are probably right. You're almost guaranteed to be correct. I wouldn't say that the end of this is completely finished. I think I want to do a subtly flared tip on it, and we can add some length to it when we do that. I'm not too worried about it. But I also do want to see what it will do as it stands. We're going to drive the car before we actually paint it. I want to get all the kinks worked out. And I kind of want to see a little bit of burn on the back end. I think it would be a bit cool before we paint it. Just some style points. I love some wear and tear, some signs of abuse. Let's see what it looks like. Now, in the last episode, we talked about caging the car, and I showed myself getting in and out. And so many of you guys mentioned, dude, you need a quick release. This will solve a lot of problems. Quick release for the steering wheel. I don't expect everybody to see every episode. That's an unrealistic request. But I do have a quick release steering wheel. We've already put it in the car. It just isn't in there right now. I'm borrowing some parts from it for the E36, and I've got to replace some of them so we can reinstall it. We are going to have a quick disconnect steering wheel in the car and a different steering wheel, so don't worry about that portion of it. The rest of the cage discussion I haven't really made a decision on yet. I'm still thinking about it. I'm leaning towards 4-point roll bar in the back with some low door bars going forward. I think that's what we're gonna do. Still gonna chew on it for a bit, but I think that's where we're headed. That is all I have for you guys for this episode. I know some of you are gonna be upset that nothing actually got accomplished and that I just talked the whole time, but you know what? I gave you a warning at the beginning, so I don't wanna hear about it. Now, to everybody else, I want to say thank you. It is a joy to get to answer questions like these. The fact that you guys ask questions and that you provide suggestions means a ton to me. Your investment in this build is why this build is happening. So thank you to all of you guys who take the time to leave comments on my episodes. I know I don't reply to all of them, but I do try to read every single one of them. And comments like those yield episodes like this, and it gives me a chance to interact with you guys like you interact with me. So thank you for that. I do appreciate it. With that said, I've got some other stuff I'm going to try to knock out this week. I'll catch you guys at the end of the week or maybe this weekend with another episode. I'm going to try to put one together. I'll catch you then. Thanks as always for the support.